Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the series that talks about a fat cult leader who has fucked up many lives. So we're going to have a lot of fun in this series, or at least I am, because, let's face it, what we're talking about with Scientology is something that's so ludicrous and so stupid. I can't even believe I'm sitting here actually talking about this. But paradoxically, it's also, I came to find out the hard way, the height of evil. One of the things that I just wanted to bring up before we get into the story here is that L. Ron Hubbard taught us as Scientologists that the way to take over the world, because that's what he wanted to do. And we didn't think we were necessarily taking over the world. We and I just wanted everybody to become a Scientologist. I thought that that was the way to handle this planet because we had the technology to do that. And we needed to spread it. And the people that didn't know about the reactive mind and all this incredible technology that we were learning, they didn't really have a chance in this world. That's completely the way it was presented. And that's completely what I believed in. And so he told us brainwashed Scientologists that the way to take over the world and the reason it was working and why they haven't been stopped yet, and this is just my opinion, but I think that one of the reasons it hasn't been stopped is because it's not fully understood just what the fuck it is and what it's trying to really do. L. Ron Hubbard said that to take over government, which was the goal eventually, you have to remain Fabian. And that, of course, was a word that he stole again from the Fabian Society in this case. They were also a secret society. And Fabian, he said, means to remain invisible. So one of the reasons that Scientology was getting so far and they haven't been taken down is because they're just perceived as a wacky UFO cult, or they do minor damage, or, the core of what they're actually after is never really exposed, right? It kind of gets lost in the drama and the woe is me and I'm a victim, which, we are as ex-Scientologists, but what the fuck is it trying to accomplish and why is it still here, right? So he said that as long as we remain crazy or seen as something wacko or people don't really know what we're doing, we can fucking take over government and eventually take over this world before they know what the fuck is happening. So I just wanted to try to let you know that while we're going to have a shitload of fun tearing this cult apart, please let's not forget that we're dealing with something super, super sinister. And I got to tell you, as a fanatic and dedicated brainwashed member myself, I didn't know what I was doing. I believed in the cause. But when you're under that kind of control, I would have died for the cause. If somebody would have come along and taken away Scientology's tax-exempt status, I and everybody else that's still brainwashed would not only resent that, and I mean, we would have just formed another version of Scientology elsewhere. Their tax-exempt status definitely needs to be removed, don't get me wrong. But the people inside, and in general, we need to be taught about how to heal ourselves and about mind control and what was done to these people, because that's what's keeping them there. If they knew what happened to them, they would leave tomorrow, right? As soon as I found out what was happening and how it worked, and that L. Ron Hubbard was a liar, and this happened in a single day, that was all I fucking needed, right? I've been recovering ever since. So while we have a lot of laughs, we're going to deal with some dark territory because it's just dark, both inside of it and trying to get out of it. And there's a lot of casualties. There's a lot of blood, a lot of suicides in Scientology because they can remain Fabian, literally can get away with murder. So let's get into the story part with that backstory in mind. Sorry to bring you down with that and maybe the intro. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a preview that it's going to be a dichotomy and a paradox and a really bizarre situation to look at something that's, I mean, did you see that last video? Those people, that was me, man. I did some of those fucking videos and I talked and acted and believed just as much as they do. So it is a trip to look back 12 years ago when I was that and try to make sense of it. Because it's one thing, like I said, to dismiss them as a bunch of idiots. It's just a stupid UFO cult. But to understand the process of how it happens is to understand, in my opinion, a lot more than just Scientology, because everybody has their Scientology, everybody has their belief system, everybody has some false self-identity that they're living that they have to try to smash. And that's all that Scientology was for me. Like at the beginning of this video intro, it says, there's a line from The Truman Show where it says, we accept the reality of that with which we're presented.
Christoph, let me ask you, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
So I was presented with Scientology. I didn't know any other reality, you know? So I'm sure everybody has their own belief system to try to wrestle with. And who's to say that this world that we're born into without, you know, we just have to accept what's here and what we're told. But maybe, you know, I certainly learned that by questioning things. The one major thing that I did was question everything. Because I figured if I could be lied to on this level with something like Scientology, what the fuck else might I not have correct about this world that I just assumed was a certain way? So anyways, without harping on, let's jump into the story. And what we're going to do is we're going to get up to the point where I move out to Los Angeles and fully immerse myself in Scientology, because there's a, you know, Hollywood and Scientology and all the madness really begins out here in Los Angeles when I moved out here in my early 20s. So we're going to cover all the way up until then, so that when we do the technical videos where we pick up with the training routines where we left off last time, you can have an idea of what it's like, me actually being a Scientologist, while you're learning about it and getting indoctrinated into it. Because the whole goal of this thing is for me to get this off my chest, thanks for listening, to heal, and to hopefully have you guys live vicariously through my experience, so that you won't have to go experience Scientology, be curious about it, go through the trauma and waste all your money. You can just live it through me and save yourself the time and the trouble. So let's get into the story about how all of this fucking insanity really started. So looking at my life from the outside in is a totally different way of seeing things. And I look at my life kind of like a story, or I don't look at it this way, but let's just say it was like a storyline. And there was particular moments that were life-changing and seemed to be kind of like leading toward an overall through line. Meaning this, ever since I was a kid, and my parents mentioned many times that I would say this, and I can vaguely recall saying this, ever since I was a kid, I said to them, I need to become an actor or I'm going to die. Somehow, which I understand more about that now, but at the time I was dead serious, but I didn't know where that was coming from. I just kind of came in with like, this is what I want to do. I really, as I mentioned in another previous video, I have a problem with authority in general, and I just can't do the 9-to-5 job. I knew that coming out of the womb. So I wanted to be an actor first of all, and then when that got sabotaged, I decided to become a musician, and that kind of went south as well. But I always knew that I wanted to do something that was artistic and sort of outside of the box, just because it's in my DNA. I don't know how to do anything else, and it's gotten me into a lot of trouble, to be honest. But that's just what I'm driven to do. So anyways, the reason I bring this up is because, you know, that desire to be an artist in some way, even though I didn't have any of it figured out and it was like whatever, and maybe something that was out of reach for a while, I realized that was the thing that got me maybe both into trouble and into Scientology and falling head over heels for it, and simultaneously what I think got me out. Because I can see from the perspective today that it wouldn't really have mattered what family or religion or whatever I was born into. I was going to go like a certain route, and then these would be the consequences and the lessons. Like I said, that's very easy and clear to see now, but none of this made any sense at all when I was going through it. Experience seemed to be random. Everything seemed to be random. And I just really wanted to fucking, you know, move to Hollywood and fucking become an actor. That's all I wanted to do since I was a kid. There was a specific moment too, which really solidified that, when I was 12 years old and I went to a theater in Thousand Oaks with my family. And I saw this movie called Stand By Me.
In all our lives, there's a fall from innocence. A time after which we are never the same.
And all the kids in it are really, really good actors, but in particular, River Phoenix. I don't know if you guys know who he is or not, but River Phoenix, to me, is one of my idols. I mean, he's not with us anymore. He also grew up in a cult and went through his whole trauma-based mind control, abuse, sexual abuse at a young age, which I'm sure contributed to his problems and untimely death, for sure. But I didn't know at the time when I was watching River Phoenix, 12 years old, in the Thousand Oaks movie theater, and getting my mind blown and having this epiphany that, hey, I've never tried this before. I don't know how to do it, but I bet you that's what I want to do. I want to do what River's doing. I want to know how the fuck that guy can be so real and authentic on camera when I know he's acting and he knows he's acting. Yet it didn't look like to me he was fucking acting. I now understand a lot more. He would have been drawing from, I'm just guessing, but obviously, well, he said it himself in an interview. He was drawing from his experiences that he lived.
Not about career. It's about believing in something. It's about prosperity, and it's about caring and empathizing and wanting to create the best, the most true to life, the most real.
Well, that's something that you wouldn't hear a lot of Hollywood people say. What you just
That's
said.
why I don't hang out and talk to those Hollywood people, because they're there to hurt me.
So that's why he was able, in my opinion, to dig so deep, and why he had such a profound effect on me when I saw him in the theater that night. So ever since then, I never stopped bugging my parents about, hey, I really want to go out to Los Angeles and start auditioning and get into this shit, however the fuck you do it. I just want to do what that guy's doing. And then so I became obsessed with, watching television shows. I got into Silver Spoons. I wanted to be Ricky Schroeder for a while. I just really got into wanting to do it. And I was pestering my parents a lot. In junior high, around 12 or 13, there was a speech class that was offered at the junior high that I went to, and I signed up for it very enthusiastically because that's what I was into at the time. So there was a gal named Marilyn Bjork who's has a very fond place in my heart, because throughout my journey, there's been 4 or 5 different angels that have been placed at the right time, right place, and have just been really guiding people. And Marilyn Bjork was one of those people. So she kind of took me under her wing in speech class, which I was addicted to because that was a way to act. And she took me aside and could see my passion and enthusiasm and said, hey, during these speech tournaments, which are tournaments where we compete with other schools all over the county or whatever, she said, hey, do you want to try to set a record here that nobody's done before? There's all these different categories that we would compete in, like impromptu, comedy, drama, all the different, 10 different categories. And she said, rather than just specializing on one, you should maybe try to win an award or place in all of them. So from the ages of 12 to 14, right about there during junior high, I became obsessed with writing my little things that I was going to, compete with and work on during class. And I would compete and all that. And I did actually set the record. I don't know if it stands today, but I got an award in every one of the categories, and I did a different one each time. So that really motivated me and got me over a lot of fear in certain ways, in certain areas in my life, initially at a pretty young age, because my mother would drive me down to these speech tournaments, whatever, town or whatever they were in. And I would throw up because I'd be super nervous. And then I would go in and do it. I still get nervous to this day. I haven't, there's if you don't have energy running through your body, it's kind of hard to give a performance. So I don't beat myself up for getting nervous or whatever. It's like energy that you try to use. But back in the day, I didn't really know that. So I just vomited. And then I was like, all right, let's go. So after that, I really got obsessed with that. And my mother one day had a meeting. I kept bugging him about wanting to go down to LA. We only lived an hour away. Or I'm not moved down there, but just I want to start fucking doing this shit. And my dad's basic response was just not really interested. I'd be, hey, what do you think? Do you think I can make it? Do you think I could do it? And he was just sort of wrapped up in his own world. And it was just like, whatever. And my mom was like, you just need to fucking calm down. Like, she was really supportive, and she would go to all the speech tournaments and help me out and be there when I was throwing up. She was great, but she was, because of her own insecurities, and also, maybe any parent would say this, she said, just wait until you're fucking done with high school, then you can go do your shit. I don't see why the hell I needed to do that. That was kind of a waste of time anyways. It's a whole other story. But I knew what I wanted to do when I was young, and it really created a lot of tension and kind of anger because I needed that outlet. And I don't think my parents realized, and I understand why not, how fucking serious I actually was. So that ended up getting put off until after high school. And then it was like, now you need to go to college. Now you need to get a job. It's like, it just went on and on. So I never got to actually do it until one day during an auditing session, oddly enough, where I did fucking do it. So once my mom cock blocked my desire to move out to Los Angeles and sort of dashed those hopes, I got obsessed by the guitar. That sort of fizzled out because I didn't really have anywhere to go with that. I wanted to fucking start auditioning or whatever and shit in Hollywood and just do that for my life. So after that, I got into the guitar, and that led into a whole new world that eventually involved, like any rock star, quote unquote, drinking, cigarette smoking, and copious and large amounts of marijuana. So after I graduated high school, the basic proposition from my parents was, look, you either need to get a fucking job or, go to college and pursue something. I already knew I was going to be a musician and all that crap, but I just went along with, that's what you have to do. You have to keep busy. You have to keep producing, particularly in Scientology, by the way. You can't really sit on your ass. A Scientologist starts to think where you have to be producing all the time. So that might have been a little bit different had that not come into our family, but it was, look, go to fucking college and get a job, either or, but preferably both, but you got to be doing something, no time off to think about who you are. And I was like, excuse me, can I go to Hollywood now? Because didn't you say like after high school? And anyways, so what ended up happening is I continued getting fired from jobs. And then eventually I started working for my dad at his company called Lee's Two-Way Radio. And so I worked for him for a couple of years while I already know I'm going to be a musician and, we're performing places. And I thought that was going to be my life. And then as the years progressed, now we're like 18, 19 and getting close to 20 or whatever, I end up stopping. Basically, here's the part where I actually end up getting into Scientology. So I'm kind of lost. I'm trying to be a musician. And in the meantime, I'm trying to satisfy the societal and my parents' needs, go to college and have a job. So college lasted for a little while, but mostly I would just like ditch and go to the beach. It was like 20 minutes from the beach. I lived on C Street in California by the beach, so that's where I spent most of my time. I was completely not taking any of this shit seriously. And it was really weighing on me because I'm like, even though I kind of knew I was going to be a musician, I was disappointing my parents and constantly like ditching class and whatever. This was a massive change, by the way, from high school where I was a straight A student most of the time and fucking never ditched until my senior year. So my ethics were going out. I was being a badder and badder boy as time went on, and especially when I got into the bands. So I already knew that was going to be my destiny, or so I thought. I was working for my father at Lee's Two-Way Radio eventually after having several other jobs, either at gas stations or fast food joints. I went from one to the next to the next. I'm basically just struggling on how to make this fucking band happen. And as the years are passing, more and more of my friends are starting to get interested in getting married, or I don't know, it seemed like the whole drive to do the band thing, I was kind of like serious about it. I'm like, dude, I don't have a backup plan. This is what I want to fucking do. And other people didn't seem to be as serious. So that kind of started to drift too. And here's the point around 20 or 21 where I actually get into Scientology, because here I am a couple years deep, 2 or 3 years deep out of high school, trying to find my way. Shit's not working out kind of one way or the other. and I'm just wasting my time or just paying the bills and doing my job. But God damn it, I really wanted to be a musician because of the band and all the out ethics that I was getting involved in and the bad friends I was hanging out with. I was a consummate marijuana smoker. I still am, except I don't have a problem with it. I definitely did back then, because one of the major things about Scientology is no drugs. Of course, you can chain smoke and kill yourself with this, which is a contradiction, but no drugs. And we'll get into why that is later, because there's some more to say about that. But, you know, all growing up, I was taught that certain things were bad, and definitely fucking marijuana. So I'm at my, I'm living in Ventura off of C Street, California Street, which is right by the beach, and basically hanging out there the whole time. And I'm living with this guy who was like really kind of older gentleman, and he was renting out a room off of C Street in an apartment. And he said to me when I first came in there, he was a fucking massive chain smoker. He couldn't stop coughing. Like, he seriously sounded like he was going to die because of it, but he couldn't stop. And then all throughout the night, by the way, when I was sleeping over there and staying there, because I ended up renting the place, he would just cough all throughout the night. See, it's already making me cough just thinking about it. Anyway, so he moves me and he says, look, motherfucker, you can chain smoke whatever you want to do here, but no fucking drugs, and especially no weed. And I was like, yes, sir, right? Just totally lied and whatever. I'm not proud of it. It's just I did a lot of lying around my parents or whatever just to fucking get by, and because I was a bad child. But anyways, one day, maybe about a year staying there, he catches me with weed, because I would just sit there in my room and blow it out of a bong and then try to like open the window and shit and blow it out. How I even got away with it that long. He must have been in denial, because I know he could fucking smell it. I was probably like lighting up the whole apartment with that aroma. So I come home one day from the beach and he's like, we need to have a fucking talk, dude. Please sit on the couch. And he talks about like he found the bong, and it's all fucking super serious. It looks hilarious looking back at it now, but it was not fucking funny. And I felt like I was a massive criminal. First of all, it was illegal. I mean, now you can get a guy out here in Los Angeles to drive up and deliver weed for you at a good price, totally legally. But back in the day, man, it was like you had to meet your fucking drug dealer, and it was like you could go to jail, and there's a whole bunch of fucking incidents that happened with that shit, which we don't need to get into. But that was sort of the thing and the turning moment where I was like, God damn it, I'm fucking up. I ditched college. I'm fucking not happy with this fucking, job at my dad's, and I'm not going anywhere, and the band's not happening. Everybody's drifting apart and getting married and shit. What the fuck, man? I thought we were doing this to make it happen. So there you go, man. And then plus I get busted, and I finally go, you know what? I'm either going to fucking continue to lie to my parents like I've always done, or this is the goddamn opportunity to finally get my ethics in, tell them the fucking truth, stop doing drugs, and get my fucking shit together. And all of this was from the basic courses and the auditing that I had. Before, you don't get into the crazy space opera Xenu shit until quite deep into it. All the basic initial tools that I was learning were solidly in at this point. Therefore, I knew I was a bad person, and finally the time was right to fucking do Scientology. So what happened next is I end up we have this long talk with this guy, and I'm like, you know what? I know. I'm sinking deeper and deeper into the couch as he's fucking talking, because I felt really shitty. I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry for lying to you. I'm going to totally quit my drug habit. In fact, I know you don't know about Scientology, but I'm going to get into this shit. Like, I kind of made my mind up that, I was scared. I was like, God damn it, I have to do a whole lifestyle change here, because I could just lie to my parents and then just move on and move somewhere else, and they'll never know. But for some reason, I felt the need to tell them and to not fucking lie anymore. That was the pivotal moment. So while they're away on vacation, they were away in New Mexico while this happened, and I got caught. So I spent a couple days soul searching, going, do I really want to do this? What do you think? I fucking one day, a couple days after this happened, and I'm moving my shit out, I fucking call up Jim Hamry at the Ventura Mission, and I say, I'm fucking ready to do this, dude. I've been a bad person. I want to tell you all, and I want to get my ethics in and become a better person through Scientology. So after I get off the phone with Jim Hamry, I drive down to the mission that day, and I enter room 101, which we talked about earlier, is that room where you enter to basically be interrogated. But by this point, I had been down to the mission enough and had enough auditing and training and knew how everything worked, where I knew what the routine was and kind of what was expected of me and why I was there. So I told Jim Hammery everything that day. And like I said in a previous video, I was in a puddle of tears by the time that I was done telling him. And it felt amazing to finally unburden all these lies and secrets that I was keeping from not only my family, but myself. And I felt like Scientology really was the answer at this point, and that I finally was going to get my ethics in, become a real person where I actually liked myself, because I didn't like myself at all, especially by this point. And also there was a huge element that I'm aware of now of really wanting my parents' love, as ridiculous as that sounds, because I knew that they were going to be really proud of me when I was able to call up afterwards. After I had that meeting with Jim, I called up my parents in New Mexico and said I became a Scientologist. And I knew that it's what they wanted me to be my whole life, because they felt, as I came to feel, that that's really the only way to be in life, to be happy and to be able to be at peace and to actually have freedom. So they just wanted that for me. And I felt like this was my way to finally get them to kind of like me. Not that they didn't, but I felt like I was always seeking their approval. I just didn't know how deep that ran until much later in my life. So once I finished that meeting with Jim Hammery and I got off the phone with my parents, who were very, very excited and couldn't believe that I suddenly, out of the blue, decided to dedicate myself to Scientology. After that, everything changed really, really quickly. I ended up moving back in to my parents' house. So I was kind of regressing and going back to the nest. And this was something that I kind of decided to do, or they allowed me to do, or we had an agreement, because I felt like I had a drug problem. I was a pot smoker, and this was like, to me and my parents, this was like basically being a heroin addict. So I moved back to their house for a while. Well, I did the purification rundown, and I talked about in one of the previous videos that I did it 3 times. So the first time I did it is when I was younger. The second time I did it, before, moving back in with the parents to do my drug rehabilitation program properly this time, I ended up smoking marijuana on it when I was around 20 years old. So what happened on this second purification rundown, real quick, is that I would smoke weed in my car and then go into the purification rundown stoned out of my mind. And I did this for a couple months until I finally passed. And we'll talk all about the purification rundown and what I experienced and what that's all about in another video. But the point of this is that when you get on that e-meter, which we'll also talk about, I was a fucking believer that that thing knows all and sees all, and that's what you're told. So when I completed the Purif and bullshitted my way through it by, doing smoking pot, which is the last thing you're supposed to do on this program, I'm holding the e-meter and I miraculously passed the test. I started to think positive thoughts. I tried to block out, my belief of this meter and it picking up on things. And I managed to pass the fucking thing, which was a huge relief. So by this point, that my parents were proud of me that I became a Scientologist. I was getting my ethics in by, doing this drug rehabilitation program. And I was also starting to really like the fact that Scientology was a way to have a discipline, because there's a lot of initial tools that can give you structure. And I was definitely lacking that. So, I suddenly started up my own landscape company. They have these things called targets and goals where you can kind of map out what you want to do for your life. So I was deciding, how to revolve my entire life around being a musician and stressing that, because I never gave up on that. That was fizzling out. And like I said, my friends were going their own way, but I was still going to fucking do that. That was what it was all about. But Scientology gave me the structure to now I have my own landscape company so I can work for myself. I'm not using drugs anymore because Scientology's high or hypnosis, which we'll talk about, replaced that for me. So I felt like I found a way to get high without needing to do, drugs or whatever. And so everything was lining up. And also simultaneously, per Scientology's indoctrination, I was distancing myself more and more from people in general, the world at large. And I started to see everybody in a very negative light, which is purposely part of the process. So a long story short, I'm doing my landscape company during the day. I'm doing auditing and training almost every day at the Ventura Mission in the afternoons and the evenings. And I'm moving up this bridge. And I feel like I'm fucking changing my life and I'm winning in life. And my parents are super proud of me too. I'm proud of myself. So I get up to grade 4, and we talked about the grades on the last video where these people were acting ridiculous talking about this stuff. And that was when I had a revelation quite to this disgruntlement of the mission, because they didn't want to leave me, because this revelation was going to lead me out to Hollywood and they wanted to hang on to me. That's another story for another time. But you know what? I had a particular revelation on grade 4, which the end phenomena that you're promised that you're going to have at the end of that, which by the way is just a suggestion so that you'll know what kind of to expect when you finish each grade, was that you're going to be able to move out of fixed conditions that you have in your life into the ability to do new things. In one session and one day, all of a sudden it hit me, wait a minute, I used to want to be an actor. I remember when I was in junior high, and that's what I wanted to do and what I think I'm supposed to be doing. So the next couple of sessions on grade 4, I babbled to my auditor all about this new revelation. It never really kind of popped back into my consciousness until that moment. So a long story short, within about a month of those few sessions and this sudden desire to rekindle, as they would say, a lost purpose or a failed purpose, I had a kind of a breakup with a girlfriend that I'd been with for a long time. That was tough. I had a landscape company that was doing well and I enjoyed. I sold that off and I got myself a job as an extra. I was still living in Ventura, but I traveled out to like Long Beach or something to do an extra job in a fucking movie called Basketball, where you can actually fucking see me. I mean, I look ridiculous or whatever. Whatever. It's an extra job, but I'm just saying it's fucking funny because I just saw it the other day somehow. And so I was like super fucking excited. I had this revelation on grade 4. I did my first job as a fucking extra and I loved it. And, everything moved very quickly. I was out in Los Angeles within a month of that revelation. And I had my life set before that. I had a landscape job. I was going to be a famous musician and work on the rock star, game or whatever I was involved in, maybe get married. It was all kind of set. And suddenly this happened to me. I changed my life and I decided I'm going to move out to Los Angeles and pursue the dream that I always had, that my parents, it's up to me to decide, but my parents kind of never really encouraged that as a real life path. That was just a dream. But God damn it, I fucking did it. And we're going to pick up the story next time, finally, from where we get into that whole scene of Hollywood and Scientology, the Celebrity Center, AOLA, OT3, Body Thetans, the whole fucking works. The real adventure actually begins when we pick up the story next time out here in Los Angeles. So I called this episode The Greatest Good, and that's in reference to a Scientology concept that's probably one of the biggest concepts that they have. And this is a framework from which any Scientologist decides to make a decision in their life. And it goes like this: whenever you have a problem or you need to decide what to do, the best choice is to do that which is the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. Briefly, in Scientology, the dynamics are the 8 different areas which any human being has a natural urge to survive through. The first dynamic is an urge to survive through self. The second dynamic, for example, is the urge to survive through family. and recreation through the sex act to perpetuate the race. The third dynamic is the urge to survive through groups, etc., all the way up to the eighth dynamic, which is an urge to survive through God or infinity, which we'll talk about L. Ron Hubbard's real views on that as we progress further. So as we get into this more and this series carries along, I just pose the questions to you. Is Scientology, like it claims, the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics for you, me, for the species, for the group, for mankind? Or is it, like I came to discover, quite to my fucking dismay, one of the greatest evils, actually? Until the next episode, my friends, stay safe, stay well in this crazy, crazy world.